on your stairway now, it should look similar to this. You probably have more information on it than I do even. But do you have something over here where the floor truss was connecting to the wall that looks like this on yours? Okay, how do we fix that? Well, it's another masking region. So all you'd have to do is go to annotate, go to that masking region, take an invisible line and draw a rectangle around that space. Finish that. And now you can go back in here and with thin lines on, put in some line. Okay, and then it'll look pretty normal for you. Okay, so you're going to just, just cleaning up your drawing, making it look more correct. Okay. Okay, so that's something fairly minor. So let's talk about getting this detail onto our sheet. And I had you set up this detail at 3/8 inch equals a foot, right? Was it hard to identify any of the component parts? Is at that scale, did it get hard to label parts? Is things a little bit too crowded? If so, how do we fix that? Change the scale? You could. Or can you make a call out of a certain area, right? So we could go to view, go to call out and say, I need to give us more information about this space right here. Let me pull this up here. So anytime that you have a hard time labeling something because the scale's too small, then we can go to that area, and in this case it defaults to 3/4 inch equals a foot, and now I have an area that doesn't show much information, right? So something is hidden in here. Well, what I'm going to have to do is remember that wall that's in there is the transparency of that wall is what's hiding that stairway. And when you create a new call out, that transparency doesn't go with the call out. So again, I could click on that wall, right click, override the graphics in the view by element, and click on the transparency and make it transparent. And now it's back to showing it again. But it still doesn't show all of that detail in here that you just created on your other drawing. So we go back to our other drawing. Copy this information that's not showing up in that drawing. Copy it to a clipboard. Go back to the detail. Paste, this time aligned in the current view. And now it's in there, right? So I must have not gathered all the parts that I needed, but you can bring those parts in. You don't have to redraw them. Okay? So I'm not going to go through any more on that, but that's how you might identify a part of the structure that you need to add more detailed information to. So only if you need to do that, you can do that. And if we go back to our first floor plan again and then go back to that section, so that might be a spot that you want to detail a little better. There might be other areas that you want to do it as well. So if you need to do that, do that. The most important thing is that we give clear information to the builder, right? And if we're jamming things together and you've got a lot of labeling, but you can't really tell what you're pointing at, then you want to blow up the detail a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about creating that sheet then. So we'd go down to a detail sheet, and I've already set one up here. It probably didn't default to this title block. It probably defaulted to this one, or it might have defaulted actually to this one. It's probably what yours defaulted to, just a matter of changing that. And this probably didn't even show up, right? Probably wasn't there. Okay, so when you go to a sheet, first thing you want to do is make sure you get the right title block on the sheet. And then you want to go drag that detail onto it. What detail was it? That's one of the problems with detail section 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is when you go to start dragging them on the sheet, you're not sure what those numbers really meant. So I'm going to go back. I think it's 7 on mine. Or is it 6? It's 6. Okay. So rather than having this labeled 6, a better thing to do to it might be to rename that my stair section, huh? And maybe it should be all capitals, right? Okay. Now when I go to look for it, when I put it on my sheet, I know which one I'm looking for, and I can drag that onto my sheet. Okay, and it says stair section when I bring it in. Okay, so at 3/8 inch equals a foot, we have a lot of space around here. But again, if we had those additional callouts, and I should rename that one, but I could bring in that callout, right? And if I have more than one callout, maybe I have a whole sheet on just stair details. A stair section plus the callouts of different areas of the section. Maybe I don't need, maybe I decided I could get it all labeled here and I don't need these details. So that would create space for other details. Or we have other things that we need to add to the project from different parts of the building where we might have details that we can put on this detail sheet. So we need to think about other details that we might need on the sheet or other things that we need to call out. So what I have trouble with in the past is students tend to say, okay, I've got all this sheet space, so I'm just going to take this, I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to take this detail and I'm going to make it fill the sheet. You know, I'm going to activate the view here, and instead of that being 3/8, I'm going to make it 1 inch equals a foot. Maybe that's too big. I'll make it 3/4 inch equals a foot. Okay, and do something like that. Don't do that. Okay, that just means you have lots of sheets with lots of big details on them. So don't do things like that. Instead, we will put other things on this sheet. There's no sense in making this detail much bigger than 3/8. Okay, so we'll find other things to put on this sheet. We have other things that we need to create. We need to create some schedules for windows and doors and things like that. Maybe there's a schedule sheet. Maybe we can fit it on a different sheet. So at this point, we'll probably leave this blank or add some of those callouts to the sheet to better give us direction. So keep in mind, like if you were to bring in, let's go click on this callout that I have here and rename it. Stair hanger detail. That makes sense, right? It's where we're hanging the stairway off the trusses, so maybe that's a stair hanger detail. And then we can drag that one up here. And if I activate that view, I can turn off the crop window, deactivate the view. Now you can drag these details on, and after you've got them on there, if you see things that are missing, you can activate the view and go draw right on the sheet, or you can go back to the detail in whatever case you want to do. We want to be complete though. If you look at this this half wall that I have here and this railing up here, that's not a finished wall, right? You're not telling the carpenter or the builder how to finish off the top of this wall, how to finish off the top of this half wall. So maybe we have to add a little more detail to this. I'm going to activate this view. And what would we put across the top of this half wall? We could put a wood cap on top of it. We could put a sheetrock on top of it. Wouldn't be real durable, but I've seen projects where they've just put corner beads and sheetrock at the top of that wall. Not very finished, but it does finish it. In this case, I'm going to put some kind of 1x board up there. Maybe it's a 1x hardwood trim board with some casings under it or something. So again, I'm just going to use detail lines to create that. So I'll go to annotation, detail lines. This is where you have to make a determination. Is it going to be thin lines, medium lines, thick lines? Thin lines are pretty thin, so I might use medium lines for this. And I'm going to just draw a line out here. And I'm just going to move it a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to, how thick a board would that be? If it's a board, it's really how thick? 3/4. So I could then offset that 3/4 inch. And is it going to be a 1x6, a 1x8, a 1x4? Well, that's not important really. What they're going to do is they're going to make a board that fits this wall. And our wall is 4.5 inches, right? So if it was a 1x6, it'd be 5.5 inches. It would hang over 1 inch on each side. Maybe that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line. Again with medium lines. Half inch, you're right. 4.5 to 5.5, right? So then if I want that on the other side, I could mirror it. But now if I want to put some trim under there, I only have a 1/2 inch, right? So now putting trim under there is probably a little difficult. So if I were to make it a 1x8, that would move that out. I'm going to move this out a 1/2 inch so that I do have 1 inch on each side. And we'll see what width that is. Whoops. Okay, so now that's 6.5 inches, huh? So there's no board that's 6.5 inches, but can they take a 1x8 and cut it down to 6.5 inches? Yes. Okay, so you don't want it to overhang too much either. So I'm going to click on this and fill out these corners. Okay, now I have 1 inch on each side. Now I can put some trim under there. Some options for trim could be a 1/4 round. It could be actually window casing. It could be some other decorative casing. So you could look this up in a millwork catalog and find out what type of casing you want to put on there or trim. I'm going to put on maybe a ranch style casing under mine. But there's lots of options. It's up to you on how decorative you want to get here. So I'm going to go to annotation, go to detail lines again. It's going to be about a 1/2 inch out, I'm assuming. And it's going to be 2 1/4 inches deep. But ranch style casing does taper a little bit, so it's going to look like that. So that might be as simple as you want to draw it. Once you've put on your trim or whatever it might be, you could then again mirror it over. And then we do need something to support that that cap board, so a component a 2x4 in there. We should have that component at the bottom as well, so it should be down here as well. Okay, so we've given them a lot more detail there, right? Now on the top of this board, if it matches that, you're just drawing the side view of that, right? So again, I can draw a detail line coming down here a ways. That line is on top of another line. I can offset it 3/4. I'd have to drag this end up a little bit. I'm going to offset again, but this time it's the depth of whatever my trim was here, and I said it was 2 1/4, so I would change that to 2.25. Now that's a side view of what that would look like up there, right? So you've added some more detail to your building. Is there going to be base trim on this wall? You know, you could add the base trim as well. Depends on how, you know, the more detail you can give to it, the better in some cases. So again, I could go to annotation, I could go to detail lines. Typical base trim is 3 1/4. So you can get pretty detailed on it when you by just drawing in that little bit of information. And then of course you'd want to label those parts. These are parts that would be probably kind of hard to label on that 3/8 inch scale drawing, right? So this is reasons you might want to blow up to a 3/4 inch on this detail. Now keep in mind that I drew those on this call out, so when I go back to this view, they're not there, right? And they don't necessarily need to even show there on a 3/8 inch scale, because on the call out, the reason for the call out is to show more detail. So you don't necessarily have to go back and put them on this one. So you might show things on the call out that you don't show on the other detail.